Somebody, if they could, everybody could mute. I'm getting a bad echo. Maybe Dwayne.
Mr. Parker, now you're muted. Commissioner Tom Griffin.
Present.
Commissioner Hugh Jernigan.
Present.
Commissioner Alan Younger.
Present.
Commission Chair Randall Tuttle.
Present.
Oh, he made it. Okay. Commission Vice Chair Wesley Curtis.
Present.
Commissioner Harold Day. Commissioner Harold Eustache. Commissioner Yvonne Hines. Commissioner Dwayne Long.
Present.
Commissioner Charles Wilson.
Present.
Okay. We have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you, Beth. And Courtney, if you could get us started.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Parker, members of the Finance Committee, and other members of the Utility Commission. So we are in the full swing of the budget season, and today we're going to be presenting our capital improvement program to you all. And just as a reminder, Mike Stover is going to give a little bit of an update here shortly, but just as a refresher, our capital improvement plan is really our plan for the next 6 years regarding any capital projects that we need to do. And so those capital projects are paid for through either revenue bonds or debt that we incur, or PAYGO, which is the same as the cash on hand that we have. And so that gets incorporated, how we spend that money and how we pay for those projects get incorporated into the overall operations budget. So I just wanted to kind of go into detail about how that works and what that looks like. But this is the plan for next year and then the 6-year period. So that's what we'll focus on today. And our April meeting will be to present the overall operations budget. So if there are not any questions before we get started for me, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mike Stover, and then Shang and Jan and Lisa will have some slides to present as well this afternoon. So.
Thank you, Courtney. Good afternoon, commissioners. As Courtney mentioned, today we're going to present the FY23-28 CIP budget. I'll start off with a budget overview and then turn it over to Jan to present the solid waste request. And then Jan will turn it over to Shane to go over the water and sewer request. Here's a picture of Ricky Rubio, one of our budget gurus. And we'll start off with a budget timeline. So the budget cycle kicked off in January. We compiled our budget request from all the divisions, sent it to the budget office back in February. We're in March, presenting the CIP plan today. As Courtney mentioned, in April next month, we'll present the operations budget, any recommendations. In May, the Utilities Commission will vote on that and adopt rates for the next fiscal year. And then June, it'll go to City Council to formally adopt the budget and appropriate funds, which will take effect July 1st. Here is a basic overview of the capital improvement plan. It includes all individual capital projects and major studies for the utility over a 6-year window. Down in the bottom is an example. You'll see plenty of these moving forward today. In blue is the appropriations that we're requesting for the upcoming budget year. The next 5 are planning years that they'll change, that they'll likely change. They're just forecasts that we put in there with the information we know at the time. As Courtney mentioned, the capital improvement plan is funded via 2 primary sources: PAYGO, which is cash on hand. I believe, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, we've been funding around $30 million in PAYGO, and the rest is made up of revenue bonds and state revolving fund loans. Operations budget, here's a quick overview for that. It pays for ongoing expenses such as personnel, supplies and services, and debt service from your capital program. That is supported by revenues from fees such as water and sewer volumetric, readiness to serve charges, and landfill tipping fees. And we'll be presenting this in April. Couple of definitions for you. Budget, simply an estimate of income and expenditures for a set period of time. Appropriations, that's what we're asking for today. Setting aside funds for specific projects and programs. And the spend plan is a projection of how much we're going to spend over a 6-year period. Here is a good example of the difference between appropriations and spending. This is an example project. In orange, you'll see the appropriations. So in this specific project, in July of 2016, we appropriated, roughly $2 million for an evaluation of a project. We spent that over the next year, and then we appropriated $5 or $6 more million to fund the design. We spent that money over the next year, got the design complete, and appropriated the remaining construction money for the construction project in July of 2018. And spent that over the next couple of years, actually spent it over the next 4 years. So the funds that you're appropriating come July 1st likely will not get spent, in 1 year. It could take a couple of years to spend those out. Any questions on that? Okay. I think this is the last one for me. This is just the 4 main capital improvement drivers that we go off of. Did I hear a question?
Yeah, it's Tom, Mike. I got a question. You said that what we're doing today is appropriating. We're not appropriating the 6 years. You're just projecting an appropriation for the current coming year. Is that correct?
Correct. We're asking, what we're presenting today is appropriations for FY23.
So the other 5 years are estimates that
Correct.
probably will change to some extent for next year and future years.
Correct. That's the best guess of what we know right now with the information that we have.
Okay. Thanks.
And this is Chris. If I could also maybe ask a question along this line. So there's kind of 2 reasons for doing this. One is we need to make sure we approve these, I'm going to say, budgeted items to the capital improvement plan, because that's kind of what we're going to stick to. And if the project were to go over budget, you would need to come back and ask for approval from us and the city. Like, if I'm going to give an example, you estimated $15 million, we approved it, and the project ended up costing 20. Before we would be able to have that additional $5 million, you would have to come back and ask for. Okay.
But that's not what we're doing today. We're just appropriating. We're not budgeting projects. Correct, Mike? We're appropriating.
Correct. All we're asking for today is appropriations. What gives us the ability to fund projects. When we actually go to award contracts and spend the money, if it exceeds $100,000, we'll come back and you guys will vote and approve for those specific contracts and awards.
Okay. And the kind of second reason why we need to do some of this projection is so Lisa can start doing planning on how to get the money, either through revenue bonds or if we're going to do it pay-go. Is that right?
Correct. When we look at our capital plan, we look at the capital plan and future projects, and we also look at our spend plan. And we do that in future years as well. And our spend plan is built off of how we think we're going to spend the capital dollars. And so Lisa looks at that to project when she thinks future debt will need to be incurred, and how much she's going to be able to spend in pay-go. And it all goes into the big picture of the operations budget.
From that. Okay. And then to just kind of clarify, to go back to what Randall was saying. So we're going to approve a budget, and it has those kind of items that Mike Stover was talking about. But when we actually go to trying to put out a contract for approval, you're going to come back to us with a certain number that hopefully is going to be kind of close to what the CIP plan is, but it may or may not be in a range. And that's at the point in time where we actually give the official okay for that project amount.
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm kind of rehashing this because I want to make sure everybody else kind of understands how all these things kind of interact with each other. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. CIP drivers, these are the 4 major drivers that we use to identify and prioritize capital projects. Capacity, basically to meet current and future demands. Compliance, if there's any regulatory or safety requirements that we need to meet. Condition, to extend the useful life of an asset, such as rehab or replacement work. Or efficiency, necessary to improve business processes, customer services, or revenue generation. Any questions on those? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jan McCard for the solid waste presentation.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey, Jan.
Hey. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. This table gives you an overview of the solid waste projects that are active within the 6-year planning window. And as Mike explained, the budget year for which we're seeking approval is shaded in a different color blue. That's FY23, the second column of numbers that you see there. So we'll talk about each one of these projects briefly on an individual basis, but the appropriations for the upcoming fiscal year will be for the wall development project at Haynesville Road Landfill. That's the $15.29 million, and for various upgrades that are needed to our solid waste facilities, and that's $2.06 million for those. So the total appropriations for the upcoming budget year are $17,350,000, and the 6-year total would be $38,974,000. So the first project to discuss is the Haynes Landfill gas system. There are no appropriations in the upcoming budget year, but there are planned routine expansions in FY24, 26, and 28 in the amounts shown on the slide there. And just as a little background information, the system is located, it's a network of piping and wells that's located in the waste, and it collects the landfill gas that's generated as the waste decomposes within the landfill. The total appropriations for that project over the planning period are $1,745,000. And this next project was discussed at length. HDR gave us the presentation a couple of weeks ago about some of the details that are upcoming in the schedule and what that process will look like. But just as a quick reminder, it is a stabilized earthen wall or berm that would be constructed around the perimeter of the landfill and would allow us to add capacity essentially within the existing permitted footprint. It would add about 3.8 million cubic yards, and that equates to 6 or 7 additional years of capacity. Of course, that's dependent on how much waste we receive, but that's the projection as it exists right now. So we're requesting $15.29 million for construction to occur for the initial portion of the wall over the next 3 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And the final section of the wall, which is much smaller in size, is planned for 2028. So you'll see an additional appropriation in that planning year of fiscal year 28 for $5.73 million. So the total over this period is $21,469,000. And the
Jan,
next project, oh yes, go ahead.
Jan, this is Chris. So as I look at that spending in 27, 28, obviously that was not on last year's because 27, 28 was not on last year. So just kind of refresh me, were we planning on doing that and it just wasn't on the total budget last year because it was too far out, or is this something new that we decided to do?
You're exactly correct. It was in our spending plan, but because it was in fiscal year 28, it didn't show up within last year's 5-year window. So it has just come up this year on your radar.
From that. Okay, so when I look at the picture and it says total project budget, that may not be the total project budget if the project is going to increase beyond this 6-year time frame. And I just say that in the sense of last year, when they had the same picture slide, it said total project budget, and it was a little over 15 million.
Because the 5.7 didn't appear. But yes, and there could have also been some tweaks to some of the cost estimates. Our spend plan covers a lot of territory, obviously, and we revise that on an annual basis. And if we have better information as to project costs, like a more detailed design or more recent data, we might adjust some of those budget numbers.
Okay, so yeah, just so I can understand. And I mean, frankly, looking 6 years out in the future, who knows if 5.7 is an accurate number? Okay.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And with inflation running the way it is now, I guess there's some uncertainty maybe in everything we're budgeting. So also in FY28, we are planning to construct the remaining lined cells at Haynesville Road Landfill. So that $13.03 million that you see is to construct phase 3, cells 6 and 7, which would be the last horizontal expansion under the current permit at Haynesland.
Jan, do you have any idea how many yards we'll have in 6 and 7?
In 6 and 7 alone, you know, it's hard. We do know that, but it's I'm not sure I know offhand. It's always hard to parse it out by cells because you get some capacity overhead. Basically, you can vertically expand. Once you expand horizontally, you can also go up. So it's a little bit difficult. But there's, I think, 12 million cubic yards in the landfill as it's permitted today.
Okay.
So that it would be a good portion of that 12 million.
Thanks.
And I think on the next slide, I have it's the same aerial that you've seen before, but it helps. It's a visual layout that helps you visualize how this is going to work. But the solid blue line shows you cells 1 through 5, which is where we've currently constructed those cells and we're working in there now. The green dash line is the first portion of the wall, the MSE wall. So you see that's much larger in size than the dark pink dash line, which would be the second portion of the wall. That's the 5.73 million. Thanks, Mike. And then the light blue, I'm sorry?
That's the part you bring in when you do cell 6 and 7. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yes, that's the reason for doing it in stages, because you can't really build that last portion of the wall until 6 and 7 are built, or at the same time you could build them together. So those are the major projects, although these next 4, which are relatively new, you may not have seen these before, but and altogether they equal the over 2 million that you saw in the summary slide. But each one individually is a little bit smaller. So this first one is to repair and replace some of the asphalt pavement we have at our facilities. Much of it is aging and needs work, needs repair and replacement in some cases. So we're requesting $600,000 for the upcoming fiscal year, $410,000 in FY24, and $260,000 in 25, for a total of $1.27 million for pavement work. And the next project is the front entrance reconstruction. This was another one that was discussed in the March meeting. You may recall that DOT is widening Haynes Mill Road, and it will impact the entrance to our facility. We'll have to replace the gate, fence, landscaping, that type of thing at the front. So our engineering estimate for replacing that infrastructure is $280,000. And we're requesting appropriations for that. Now, you might also remember the DOT offer to reimburse us was $230,000. So there is a slight difference between those two numbers, but we think it's important to appropriate the amount that the consulting engineer estimated for the project. Haynes Landfill has a dual scale system that's nearing 20 years of age. It was installed in, I believe, in 03, either 02 or 03. And we're seeing increased maintenance and repair costs on those. And we've been advised that they're reaching the end of their service life. So we've budgeted $600,000 to replace both sets of scales and to do some work on the foundation and the pit underneath the decking that you see there. It is important for a couple different reasons. There's a regulatory requirement to weigh your waste accurately as it comes in. And of course, we want to bill our customers appropriately and charge them accurately as well. And I think we just have one more, Mike. The landfill leachate system. This is the system that collects the water that comes in contact with waste within the landfill. It's treated as wastewater. And the original components, some of that system dates to 96 or 97, I believe. And of course, we've upgraded some pumps and control panels and components throughout the years, but it's been kind of a piecemeal approach. So we would like to do a comprehensive upgrade of all the electrical components, flow meters, pumps, those sorts of things, so that we can extract good data on how much leachate is being generated and where, the quality and the quantity of leachate is important for us to know. So $580,000 is the requested appropriation for that work. This would do all of the system that's not impacted by the upcoming wall construction. So the pieces that would be demolished or replaced in the construction of the wall are not included. They would be in that budget, but this is everything else. So $580,000 for a total there. And I think that's our final project today. So be happy to answer any questions on any of those.
Hey, Jan, this is Chris. The front entrance construction or reconstruction, did we have that estimate when we were negotiating with DOT?
Yes, sir, we did. And I think there's a little bit of rounding. I believe our estimate was 270 something. It was very close to 280. And we did provide that data to DOT, and they considered it. They did look at it, and they informed us not too long before that March meeting that the $230,000 was going to be the highest and best offer that they could make. They took it to the assistant state negotiator, I assume in Raleigh, but that they said that was the most that they would do.
And I guess we really had no choice in the matter.
Basically, yes. Yeah. Well, the next step would have been condemnation if we had not accepted that amount.
Did they give you any idea what in the 280 they didn't agree with?
Yes, to some degree they did. If just as a reminder, their offer was actually $191,000. Yeah. So we were pretty far apart with between 191 and 275, about thereabouts. They did not agree with contingency. We had some contingency in the estimate that we got. The engineers have put contingency and engineering fees. which of course are necessary to prepare the bidding documents and assist us with the design. But I believe those were the main two components that they wouldn't consider. Of course, we're hopeful that it would come in less than 280 and that the 230 would fully cover the work.
Well, if it comes in 325, are they going to go up? No.
I doubt it. We could certainly go back to them with the discussion. I don't know the exact schedule for them to move forward too. So I guess there's a question about whether or not the time value of money might be a factor as well.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all having a good Tuesday. So this is the summary table with the 6-year planning window. We have 11 water distribution and wastewater collection projects, 1 water treatment project, 4 wastewater treatment projects. And for FY23, we're asking for total appropriations of $42 million with total anticipated appropriations through FY28 of $312,950,000. For asset management program and studies, we are requesting appropriations in $1.5 million, which will help with the utility-wide cybersecurity implementation, asset risk planning application implementation, cross-connection control supporting applications. And then we do not have a master plan on the schedule for this upcoming year. We'll catch back up with the wastewater facilities master plan in FY25. Collection system improvement program. This project helped us reach our goal of reducing SSOs to less than 2 out of 100 miles of sewer lines. We are requesting $15 million for FY23. Some of the projects that we have for this upcoming fiscal year is CSIP Year 7, System-Wide Sewer Rehab Phase 5, the North Business District Sewer Rehab, Overdale Sewer Rehab Project, and along with this will help us fund the red flag repairs and unforeseen sewer improvements. And here you can see the a very small map of the North Business District, but this is pretty close to, well, this is downtown. So the northern border is around the 21st Street. The south, if you picture Cherry and Trey Street, east is probably about 15th Street, and to the west border, it's I guess around the Chestnut Street area.
Thank you, Shane. We got a couple of slides just to highlight the success of the CSIP. Since the CSIP is started, we've seen a 40% reduction in the number of sanitary sewer overflows. And we are expecting another record low this year. We had a good month in February. March, we've seen an uptick, but last I checked, we are still well below where we've been the past couple of years. So we're currently on track to hit around 61 SSOs. Part of the CSIP, a large portion of the CSIP program includes the full condition assessment. So far, we've done 27% of the system. Out of 1,800 miles, that equates to roughly 475 miles of pipe that we have physically stuck a camera in and looked at. We've inspected the 17 worst condition sections of the system, as shown in red and orange. And as you can imagine, that those are the oldest sections of town. There's a couple pictures on the right of the Tanglewood force main, and Shane will show you some pictures of that later in the presentation. But the Tanglewood force main replacement design is included in the CSIP funding as well. And last but not least, so far we have had $74 million in capital projects that are either complete or in progress as a result of the CSIP. There's $19 million in SSES, sanitary sewer evaluation and studies, $4 million that are in the preliminary engineering report phase, $24 million worth of work in design, $11 million in construction, and over $16 million in work that has been completed. And I'm not going to try to go through every one of these circles on the right side, but it just shows you the breakdown by project phase and the actual projects themselves. Any
Mike, yeah, Mike, this is Wesley. I think this has been one of the best programs since I've been involved on utilities as a prevention, measure. It's just, you're spending money, but down the road, it just pays off big time and it only gets better. So that's good. It's been a great program.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that because it's been, we're in year 6 right now, and it's been a lot of work, a lot of meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Likely it's paying off, and we're seeing some good numbers.
For sure.
So, and Mike, just to give us perspective, before we started this program, how do we make determinations about capital projects like we are now? Just give us an idea. What did we do before?
We've done a couple things as far as capacity projects. What we did, we went based off the latest master plan, and just a quick example of what we've done differently since then. We still take what's in the master plan, but instead of taking that information and just going out there constructing that, we field verify. So we add some flow meters. We reconcile those numbers and make sure that that project needs to be done right now, or maybe it can be deferred a couple of years. And we've had success deferring some projects. As far as the condition side of things, we have really went off of work order history. So taking data from CityWorks, our work order management software, and if we have a trend, if we have an area that has an abundance of work orders or repairs, we'll go fund a project there. The CSIP has allowed us to kind of spend the valuable money that we have smarter and spend it at the right time. So we're putting a lot of cameras and pipes. We've got risk scores for each defect. So we have a score level 0 to 100 that we know if it's above a certain threshold, we need to go repair it. And that's what Shane was talking about with those red flags. A red flag is something that could create an SSO almost immediately. We want to get those quickly.
Hey, Mike, this is Dwayne. Hey, wondering how this compares with some of the other larger systems around the state. Are all the systems being this proactive, or are we kind of a step ahead in the game? How do we rank?
I don't have a good answer for that because I don't know what every other system's doing, but I would say we're ahead of the game. I would easily say we're ahead of the game.
I'll add, Mike, I can add to that as well. I know just from being part of the state organization, NC1 Water, in the past, we were behind. I think our peers were doing a lot more than us before we started this program. But now I think it's really switched and we're becoming a leader, and really making a lot of effort. So that's really switched. I think we were behind and not doing anywhere near what others were doing. And I'm looking at our peer utilities, other large utilities is what I'm comparing us to. And now we're really leading from the front, I think.
Well, and I would add one thing that's been rewarding for me personally is to see, all of this work pay off, statewide. So what I mean by that, there have been multiple presentations at the annual conference, NC1 Water Conference, specifically related to CSIP. There's been at least 2 or 3 a year for the past several years. So we're showcasing, we're proud of what we're doing, and we're sharing it with our peers.
Mike, it's Tom. Got a question. Is there something unusual included in the design category? Because it's about 1/3 of the total cost, which is probably a little higher than what we would normally expect the design phase to be related to the overall cost of a project.
Well, let me clarify that. That $24 million is not just design money. That's $24 million in projects that are in the design phase. So we think that there's $24 million that eventually will, turn into a construction project, but that is in the design phase right now. Does that make sense?
So there'll be something over in the construction category, but I mean, you know, when I look at construction, both under construction currently and completed, I'm looking at 27 billion. I'm spending almost as much doing design currently as I've spent altogether in current construction or completed construction.
Well, let me clarify. None of these numbers include engineering or design. These are all, those values are how much the construction project is going to cost. These are just phases. So the design, the data collection, all that gets rolled up under the CSIP fee. So that is not $24 million in design work. That is $24 million worth of project that for that particular project is in the design phase. Does that make sense?
Where you're saying it's not design, but it is design. Yeah, no, I'm confused.
So that could be multiple. So for example, over here is the design portion. So a lot of these Shane mentioned, Overdale, Sprague Street, Washington Park, these projects have a total value of 24 million. But right now we don't have the design complete, so we're not in the construction phase.
Tom, I think what he's saying is that's not the designer's fee.
What is it then?
It's the number of projects, the percentage of the cost of the number of projects that's in design.
It's the value of the construction of this project.
Right.
Okay, all right. Now I understand that phrase. Well, we ought to change design then and call it something else.
Yeah, I like designer's fee. I like designer's fee at those numbers.
Yes, I know you were. That's why you were saying this.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Next up is Elledge Basin capacity improvements. We do not have any capacity improvement projects identified for this upcoming fiscal year, so we're not asking for any appropriations. Facility improvements, we are requesting $250,000 that will help fund miscellaneous improvements at UFO. So for this upcoming fiscal year, we are requesting to upgrade their security system, like the security cameras and the security cards, and painting and new flooring for the utilities field operations. There you can see the building. Lift station replacement and improvements. We are requesting $4.5 million for FY23 to help with the design and construction of the new Louisville lift station. So we are asking for appropriations, but this the design and construction of the new lift station will be reimbursed by Louisville. And here you can see a picture of the existing very small lift station that's at the same parking or the same shopping center as Food Lion.
Are we going to be expanding our customer base through this upgrade? Are we going to be extending sewer lines somewhere else that's not there now?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a project that was identified by the town of Louisville. They are going to pay the cost of the relocation, and it will basically move this lift station downstream, increase capacity, extend some gravity sewer lines, and the ultimate goal is to serve the Great Wagon Road, which they're currently working with DOT on.
Okay. Similar to the Elledge Basin, we don't have any capacity projects identified for Muddy Creek Basin for this upcoming fiscal year, so we are not requesting any appropriations. DOT utility relocation projects. This project help us relocate utilities that are located within the DOT right-of-ways. The current projects include the Northern Beltway Eastern section with other projects that can maybe identify later. Similar to the other two.
Shane,
Yes. Yes, sir.
Shane, it's Chris.
Mhm.
On that previous slide,
Mhm.
how good are we at estimating this? I mean, what's our history on it?
Are you asking about the estimating the budget that we need for this upcoming year?
Yeah, in the past, when we make an estimate for NCDOT road widening, how close are we coming in our estimates on an annual basis?
Well, so some of these are projects that we know are going to finish up because we get the bill at the end of the project. DOT will send us the bill and we would pay it then. So Todd Lewis goes through and he knows which projects are concluding. And so he pretty much estimates when the construction will be finished and when we will be receiving the bill. So pretty close, I would say.
Yeah, Mr. Parker, this is one of the tougher ones that we have to deal with. And what we do, we basically look at how much we have appropriated from previous years and we adjust it annually because one, you know, it's dependent on the NCDOT projects. And then on top of that, it's dependent on when they get completed. So we have to, if we enter an agreement with the DOT, we have to appropriate the funds for that agreement up front. Then it could take maybe 1, 2, 3 years to construct the project, but we don't pay it till the very end, you know, with one final check. So we keep track of that. I believe this is one that we were projecting a higher appropriation last year. And we checked, you know, kind of where we stand and lowered that amount down to match what we actually need.
Yep.
I'm sorry, am I correct that DOT is responsible for some of these projects and paying?
Correct.
Yes.
It's basically who was there first.
Right. Does that include in that amount, or is that the total amount, or is that just what we're responsible for ultimately paying for?
This is just what we're responsible for.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. South Fork Basin, we do not currently have any capacity projects for this upcoming fiscal year, so we are not requesting any appropriations. So Tanglewood Forest Main, this is a new project for us. This project, we are requesting $7.5 million to help with our aging and failing forest main. That this Tanglewood lift station and the forest main are critical assets to operations of our wastewater system. And this will help fund the construction portion for that we are hoping to get started in FY24. So the picture to your very left, where you can see it spray up, that was from the leak this past February. I believe KRG came out and helped us put the sleeve on it, which you could see from Mike's presentation. The two pictures on the right were from the failures in 2020 around Hampton Road. And if you look carefully at the picture in the middle, the pipe is gone. So this forest main is in pretty bad condition.
So Shane, this looks like a new project because I did not see this on the CIP last year.
Yes.
So did we just not have it on the radar and suddenly it just got elevated this year?
Mike?
This is one that we included the design work for the Tanglewood Forest Main in the CSIP last year, but we didn't include the construction because we had to evaluate, we had to do several things. And right now we're in the route selection process. The number of failures we've had on this asset in the last 2 years are really high. And right now we're projecting $7.5 million to replace, you know, the total force main, which we hope the actual cost will come in less than that.
Mike, in the process of looking at that, did we look at possibility of trying to find another place to put that pump station?
We did not look at relocating the lift station totally, just due to cost.
Okay.
Courtney, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I thought he was good. I thought Mr. Griffin was going to ask if we were looking at relocating or putting the force main back in a different location.
Well, yeah.
And we were actually looking at several different alternative alignments that we're trying to kind of narrow down. But yeah, the pump station, as Mike mentioned, the cost, we're just keeping it where it's at. And this one is one of those that kind of popped up on our radar. I mean, we knew we had breaks. We had some breaks on this force main before, but we've had several within the last year since last budget season. And it definitely has gotten escalated recently.
At one time, we had a capacity issue also. And I know there's been a lot of development north of 40. Talk a little bit about that, how that's working out.
Yes, so we did have a capacity issue at Tanglewood. And if you recall, we structured a new agreement with Davie County. And so Davie County's flows have been removed from the Tanglewood lift station, and now they're going directly into what we're calling the Idols Road lift station. And so that we really think Tanglewood, as it stands now, with minor changes that we can make, will be able to serve the basin, the Clemens Basin that it was intended to serve.
So anything north of 40 is going to be carried back over to east across the ridge.
Anything north of I-40?
Yeah. Any development north of I-40, if it's going to get public sewer, it's going to have to go east.
No, it'll still come through Fair Oaks and drain the Tanglewood. The only thing that'll be removed is Davie County. And if it's far enough north, it'll probably get a Harper Road lift station.
Well, that's what I was talking about. Eventually, going to be back in a capacity problem if you're not careful.
Well, that's another scary thing about Tanglewood. Not only is it a couple hundred feet from the river, which is upstream of the intake, there is a lot of flow going into it. Even with Davie County off of it, it serves pretty much Clemens. Yeah. And if that force main breaks, luckily that picture on the left, that's a pinhole leak. We can put a repair sleeve on that, quick, fast, and in a hurry. If the pipe breaks and we have to cut a piece of pipe out and sleeve a new piece back in, we're in real trouble because we don't have enough time to take flow off that lift station and do that work. It's a very extensive, frac tank effort. It gets very costly and super expensive.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Mike, how old is this?
Late 80s.
Force main. Late 80s?
Yep.
Water distribution system improvements. We are requesting $10 million for this next fiscal year to help fund capacity upgrade projects that's identified in this water distribution system master plan. The master plan is we're working on that right now with HDR, I believe. And then this project will also help fund the water service line renewal, hydrant replacement project, valve condition assessment, the cross connection control inventory, and improvements associated with the lead and copper rule regulations. Water tank rehab. We are not asking for any appropriations for next year. This project helps fund the painting and structural repairs for our 14 elevated and ground storage tanks. For this upcoming fiscal year, we will be performing condition assessment on Sides Road, Thomas Finish Water Reservoir 1 and 2 are some of those. And here you can see a picture of the Sides Road tank. And I've been told people are very fond of that otter. So. Water treatment rehab and upgrades, we are requesting $500,000 for this upcoming fiscal year. That will help with replacement parts at the 3 water treatment plants, along with general building and grounds replacements. Also, this will help fund with structural evaluation study of the Idos Dam. The picture to the top is the Idos Dam itself. You can see with the water flowing. And then the picture at the bottom is part of the wing wall. If you can see, it just has structural issues, which is why we want to do an evaluation study. The bottom is all washed out. For Biosolids drying facility, we are requesting $250,000 to help with maintenance and equipment for the facility. LH rehab and upgrades, we are requesting $1.5 million for this plant, which would also help fund the general building, grounds, and equipment maintenance, along with the repairs of spalling concrete wall surfaces and expansion joints of the activated sludge basins 3, 4, 5, and 6. And here you can see some of the pictures of the ASB of the activated sludge basins. If you look carefully at the picture to the left, you can see a rebar poking out. Muddy Creek rehab and upgrades, we are requesting $500,000 for this upcoming year to help with general building, grounds, and equipment maintenance at the plant.
I would
I
like.
have a question with this. It seems like when we get down to some of these numbers that are 500,000,
Mhm.
and we're doing repair and maintenance and that kind of thing, is that really a capital outlay?
So it's a lot of it will go towards purchasing of equipment, and
Okay.
a lot of those pumps are not cheap.
Yeah, kind of our threshold, Mr. Long, is $50,000 or a lifespan of 10 years or more. So you could easily run to a pump that $50,000, $75,000 in value.
Well, but the fact that it is equipment explains how it applies to capital then. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
And just for a point of clarification, this picture right here is fairly recent. It is after the headworks has been completed. I don't know if you guys have seen that in a while, but figured I would point that out.
It's the best looking picture we've had of the site in like 7 years. So that's why Stover's pointing it out.
Wastewater treatment plant expansion, nutrient removal. We are not asking for any appropriations at this time. I'm not sure if we're going to get nutrient limits, but I think that's at that point we'll decide or figure it out. Is that correct? I'm sorry, I screw this up all the time. It's Courtney.
That's right. That's right. This is one that has been on the books for several years. We don't have nutrient limits yet, but the process is working its way through the state, and all the different committees that the state is presenting to, the EMC, the SAC, CIC, there's all these kind of process that's taking. It is becoming more active than it has been in the past. The Yadkin PD River Basin Association has presented our comments to the draft plan, and so there's a lot of activity going on right now. So we keep this on the book so that when we do get limits, we'll be ready to proceed.
So Courtney, what I'm hearing from this is that Charles needs to be paying close attention to this, because he may be the only person on the commission currently who might be on there when this actually starts happening.
Oh, you never know. The department might move quickly. I mean,
That's right. That's right. That's right. We have been dealing with this for years. I know, David Saunders and Ron were very involved with this, 10 years ago. And I know this has been part of the CIP for a long time, but at one point when we renew our permit for the plant, we will have limits, and I don't know that it'll be this next round. I think our permit expires in probably in a couple years, year or two. But more than likely it could be in the next one. And
Well,
I know the
I'm
permit's
okay.
for 5 years.
I'm okay with kicking this down the road as far as possible, because even that $5 million number is probably a gross underestimate once we get into it.
Oh yeah, that would just be for kind of planning and some studies. That wouldn't be a drop in what we'd have to spend. So correct.
Okay, I believe Shane is done. We're going to turn over to Lisa Saunders.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Parker and members of the commission. We just have a few slides to talk about how we pay for all this capital. The first slide, it relates to the estimates for this fiscal year that we're currently in. Our total debt service on the water and sewer funds, $42,128,175 this year. Of that, our revenue bond principal and interest payment is $33,871,741. We have loan repayments of $6,951,304 with the state loan program, and our equipment leasing payments, they stay pretty steady at $1,305,130. And for reference, if you can think back several years ago when we didn't have a whole lot of state loans, we kind of got to a high point of $50 million with our debt service. So it's dropped down on the revenue bond side considerably. As we pay down on revenue bonds, and then the state loans, which are at a fairly low rate or no rate, have ratcheted up just a little bit. At the end of this fiscal year, we'll have total revenue bonds outstanding of $402 million. As a reminder, we did just issue water and sewer revenue bonds of $70 million, so that's inclusive of that amount. State loans outstanding $177,012,019. That's not exactly true. That includes the amount that we will draw for Nielsen. So you need to back off really what we have today is about $100 million less than that. State loans are a draw program, so you actually don't incur the debt until you reimburse yourself for the expenditures. But that does include what we anticipate receiving on Nielsen. And that would be water and sewer. We've got more slides to look a little further out and with our debt service for water and sewer and a couple more slides. For solid waste, our debt outstanding, and I can't hardly believe it, it's only $3 million now. So we really don't have too many more years to pay off that debt. But at the end of June, it'll be $3,071,059. Our debt coverage ratio, if you're new on the commission or if you've been here for a while, you know this. When we issue revenue bonds, we agree to certain bond covenants. One of those is what's called a debt coverage ratio. The minimum, according to the bond covenant, is 1.1 times. We strive to be at 2, which we've made really good progress over the last several years. Probably when I first came into this role, it was probably 1.2, 1.3, wasn't much over the minimum. And we've done a really, really great job of moving that ratio up in the 2 category, which is what a rating agency really wants to see for a highly rated utility. And why is that important? That's important because it gives us a better rating, which means we get a lesser interest cost on our debt service. So the projection for June 30th is we project revenues to come in at about $123 million. Our operating expenses about $49 million. So that leaves us $73,348,832 to pay our debt service with. And if you remember from the previous slide, the bonded debt service is $33,871,741. You divide that by your revenues, and that's 2.17 times. And your revenue bonds are parity. They are first position, and the state loans come after that.
So Lisa, how does our debt coverage ratio compare to the other large utilities in the state?
We're still lower. The other ones are more 3 and above, but we're working to continue to increase that. So the rating agencies like that, and you'll see this on the next slide. that it's growing, that it's continuing to grow. But another thing that there are other things that go into that rating, you know, that we might be better than other of the larger municipalities around. One of those is we're fortunate to have the Yadkin River in our back door, so we have ample water supply, and that gets us really good marks. We keep cash, so we have cash, whether it's restricted or unrestricted. We have good cash reserves. That's another something that gives us high marks, as well as senior management and policies that we have in place. Debt coverage ratio. Let me say up front that one of the reasons you see this kind of not real consistent, but up and down, is that the ratio does include conveyances, but we don't project conveyances going forward. And, you know, they don't come in very streamlined. They get recorded in our books based on when they get recorded at the tax or at the register of deeds. So they are a little bit, they're not consistent, if you will. So, but saying that, you can see in 2020, we were up to 2.5 times ratio, and the blue line is where our goal is, like I said, of 2, and the green line is the bare minimum that we could possibly have. And then you can see as we project forward, a steady growth up to 2.5, which is where we want to be. Okay, next slide. And this is just, you've seen this graph many times, but this just projects out what our water and sewer debt payments will be, you know, over the next 30 years. And I will point out as well, so the blue line is a revenue bond, the red or bar is state loans, and the purple is future debt. And you'll notice there's no purple. We're going to pay for everything unless something changes, like nutrient removal, or there's some, you know, outlying project over the next 6 years we don't know about. In our current spend plan, we don't plan to borrow any more money, which I think just speaks volumes to how well this utility is managed. If you look at the funding sources of how we're going to pay for capital over the next 6 years, plus the current, we're going to use 53% of PAYGO of the total. We'll use about 30% in state loans, and we're down to using only about 16% in revenue bonds. So that just, as I said, that just speaks volume to how well I think we are managing the capital without, I know the debt looks like we have a lot of debt here as you see it spike up, but I think it's very manageable. And you can really see the blue line in the revenue bonds, how it really does fall off. The red line in 25 grows because that's when we anticipate we'll start paying for Nielsen. If you remember, you don't start paying principal and interest on or your debt service payment with those state revolving loans until 18 months after construction. So that's, or when it's complete, or at least when you've projected for it to be complete. So that's why the red bar goes up. So we'll hover a little more than 40 million. We still don't get quite to 50 again, but, and then it will fall off. Another thing to remember is the state loans are paid back over 20 years at low rates. Water and sewer revenue bonds are paid back over 30 years. So we're paying it off quicker.
Could we go back a slide?
Yes.
When we start doing it, or when we finish Nielsen, what's going to happen with that debt coverage ratio? What will it look like?
Nielsen will have a thing to do with the debt coverage ratio because this is only revenue bonds.
Oh, that's right. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
The other comment is you've done such a good job of that. We ought to change our goals for your next person that comes along here. If you've done so good, we probably ought to change our goals.
We're making baby steps up.
What you don't realize is that her Lisa's old goal was 2, and now that we've gotten there, she's raising the bar herself.
That's good.
And I think that's all I have. That's the last slide that I have, but I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lisa, and others. Are there any other questions? Stover, you can stop sharing the screen now if you want.
Courtney.
Yep.
It's Tom. I got one from Mike Stover. I'm thinking about that Louisville pump station. What kind of conversation have y'all been having with Louisville? He said they were going to pay for something, and we're looking at what, $4.5 million, I believe, was what was on that item.
Yeah, $4.5 million is the total, but we've also got to account for other work at the other 48 lift stations. So I believe the project itself is only like $3.5 million. I believe that's right. They're going to fund that entire amount. They've already agreed to that. I believe they're going to use their ARPA funds. And right now, go ahead, Mr. Griffin.
Are they going to move it? I would assume.
Yes. It'll get moved downstream. And basically where it is now, we'll tie on with gravity, run it several thousand feet downstream, put a larger new lift station, extend the force main back up to discharge, and then it'll open up more surface area.
And they're paying that whole tariff.
Yep.
Wow.
We will eventually bring an agreement. We're working on to the utility commission approval. Correct? Aren't we working on an agreement with them right now?
Yeah, we're waiting on town of Louisville. It's in their court to get their comments on the interlocal agreement.
Okay.
Speaking of ARPA money, there was another, the county gave us some ARPA money for a project. Is that on the CIP plan?
Is that, you referring to the Highway 65?
Correct.
Okay, so first yes. So actually the funds came directly to the city, or are going to come directly to the city. The county requested it, but it's going to be sent to us. And that is on our radar right now. We're working with the state to get an extension on some of the deadlines that they're requesting because they're just a little tight. And as far as where that falls and how we're going to fund that, were we going to fund that out of the water distribution system? Yeah.
Yep.
So that's where we'd see it in the buckets.
Yes.
Yep.
And it was 3.1 million is what the funding, the ARPA funding was.
How many
Do
feet?
you have a time?
Mr.
Go
Griffin,
ahead,
what
Tom.
would you say?
Just how many feet does that get us? What was the distance?
Highway 65 was 2.5 miles.
2.5 miles. Great. Wow.
And what was your projected potential start date on that?
Tomorrow?
Well, the initial letter that we got with the deadlines, kind of the project deadlines, had us completing a design by August of this year. And that's what we're asking for the extension on. There's really no way to do a request for qualifications and go through the process to select an engineer and get a design done that quickly. So we're really asking for a 12-month extension. So if we have 12 months in addition to that to complete the design, and then another year to complete the construction.
Okay. Okay, so did anybody have any questions about the capital improvement plan? Did anybody have any concerns? Because we'll, I guess, be given maybe a very brief presentation at the next meeting on this, but any concerns about anything? Do we get a head nod to move forward with this?
Yeah, I have some comments. Just looking at all these things we're talking about for capital improvement, they're all sustainability items. You know, it's building toward, most of these items are either building towards the future, addressing what we're going to have in the future, pay me now or pay me more later, or in some cases, like with the wall at the landfill, it's going to be direct revenue coming in, direct revenue from that, in the tens of millions of dollars. So this sustainability and building to the future, I think it's very impressive.
Mike, this is Wesley. Just curious, how long is pipe expected to last in the ground?
Depends on a lot of factors, but we think we can get at least 50 years. We got a lot of pipe that's over 100 years old.
Yeah, right. So at the Tanglewood, why is that coming apart?
The big thing with Tanglewood is what's in the pipe. It's wastewater. It's very corrosive, and it's twofold.
Okay.
One, the wastewater is corrosive, so it's eating up the inside the pipe.
Okay.
Two, we've done some testing, and the soils are corrosive, so it's eating up the outside of the pipe. So we're getting hit from both sides.
And Wesley, to further outline that, I was in high school and college during the 80s, and that was a really rough time. So if that pipe was born around then, I get it. Okay, just try to add a little levity to a serious subject.
Hey, Chris, does that mean we should assess you and your peers from that era for the damages done?
As long as you give us credit for all the good music that came out at that time. Okay, so do we have kind of a head nod to kind of pass this along? Any other comments or questions? Are we good? I'm seeing Hugh kind of shake his head.
Yeah, we're good.
Tom and Alan's giving me the thumbs up. Okay, Courtney, we don't need to take an official vote. Is that correct?
I think the finance committee members I don't think it needs to be official vote, but you guys agreed that we can send it on to the full commission.
Yes.
And so I think we're good.
Okay. And any concerns from any of the other commissioners who are not on the finance? Okay. Okay. First of all, I want to thank Shang and Mike Stover and Jan and Lisa for putting together a real good presentation, and for Courtney bringing it along for us, and for all the comments, all the good comments that we got. I do appreciate that. And I would say, if you do have any questions that pop up, give Courtney or Mike a call, because they live and breathe to be able to explain this to us. So they are always excited to be able to further bring us along with the education on it. And if they can't answer it, I see Randall, he's been around for so long, he can probably explain it to you. So, okay, is there anything else that I'm missing, Courtney?
No, I don't think so.
And we're next going to meet again on
the next meeting. Well, we'll have the regular commission meeting April 11th, just for regular business, and then we will present the operations budget on April 25th. And the documents that I sent you last night, those are just a piece of the overall budget book. So that's the CIP piece, and you will get a full budget book, that includes the operations at some point in the future.
But prior to that meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank everybody for taking your afternoon to go over all this stuff, and you have a good rest of your Tuesday.
And I guess we just have to adjourn. So you'll have to ask for somebody.
Oh,
before we adjourn.
Okay, so Tom makes a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Hugh. Do we need to take a vote on that?
I would say that you could just raise your hand and we can call it good.
We can go on. Okay. Let's see. So I see Alan's raising his hand. Okay. So I guess we've got it. Okay. Yep. So we're adjourned. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.